so was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, he will be called a Nazarene. He will be called a Nazarene. Well, it's a quote because I got quotes in my English translation. Okay, first let's throw the quotes out because the quotes are not in the original. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, he will be called a Nazarene. What prophet said that? Not written anywhere. No prophet said that. You won't find it anywhere. Matthew made it up. It's not only that he quoted verses out of context, it's not only that he stuck extra words in that didn't belong, it's not only that he twisted the meaning of other verses, he just made it up sometimes. I guess he hoped nobody would notice. He was trying to reach the Jews, but he just hoped nobody would notice. So let's take a serious look at this, because there is the question of, what does he mean? First, notice that the only time in his book he uses a different formula. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, plural. Got it? He doesn't quote the prophet, he doesn't quote Jeremiah, he doesn't quote Isaiah. Prophets, plural. That's the first thing. It doesn't occur anywhere else. Then he will be called a Nazarene. There are lots of different ideas as to what he actually had in mind, but because it's prophets, plural, it points in one specific direction. Now, in Nazareth, you see those letters N-Z-R. That's the root of the word, that's Saret. What prophets could he have been referring to? Now, remember I told you that when he quoted Isaiah 7, he was not just looking at Isaiah 7. When he quoted the famous virgin birth prophecy, is it a virgin birth prophecy or not? We'll discuss that in a bit. However, when he quoted that, my premise was he was not just looking at Isaiah 7, but he was looking at Isaiah 7 through 11. Now, why do I say that? Take a look in the 4th chapter of Matthew. There, Matthew quotes in Matthew 4, 15 and 16, land of Zvulun, land of Naphtali, the way to the sea along the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles, the people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. That's Isaiah 9, 1 and 2. Hebrew versions just back it up a verse to the last verse of Isaiah 8, first verse of Isaiah 9. So he's quoting that section, and what's prophesied just a few verses later? Child is born to us, son is given to us, the government will be upon his shoulder. A wonderful messianic prophecy in Isaiah 9. And now what comes in Isaiah 11, a passage we looked at yesterday? What's written there? The decimation of Assyria, its mighty forest lopped down, chopped down. Judah, Jerusalem themselves have been decimated, but out of just a little stump, right? What's going to go forth from that stump? Remember? A branch. It's coming up from the root of Jesse. A branch will go forth. And then Isaiah 11 is one of the most universally recognized messianic prophecies in the Bible. In other words, Jews, Christians, everybody recognizes that as a messianic prophecy. You say, well, how do I know Matthew had that in mind? Well, we saw that one of the titles of the Messiah was branch. We saw it in Jeremiah 23, we saw it in Zechariah 3, we saw it in Zechariah 6. Semach, branch. The prophets referred to that. Some would also suggest it could refer to his lowliness as well. What's the word that Isaiah 11:1 uses for branch? That a branch will come out of the stump of Jesse and grow up from the roots. The word there is netzer. Netzer. It seems very clear. I mean, you find, listen to me. If we had Orthodox rabbis sitting here, they could recite to you off the top of their head plays on words in rabbinic literature. Constantly plays on words, where words are cited and a similar word is cited. No, read it this way, back and forth. Matthew is finding this extraordinary little play on words. He will be called, he will actually be a netzer. The prophets then expanded on this in other places. He'll be called a netzer, a branch. Other prophets referred to him as a branch. There's also the possibility of the lowliness of Nazareth and the unlikelihood of Messiah living in Nazareth, just such an obscure place, and the prophets that spoke of the Messiah's obscurity. That could be what's in his mind too. But it's clear to me, when I was going through this with an ultra-Orthodox rabbi, we were studying some text together. When we got here, he said, my suggestion, he said, I think it's Isaiah 11:1. He said, I think he was thinking about Netzer. But he's not just thinking about Netzer there. Netzer, Natseret, play on words. He's going to live in this place. Here, picture this. We'll give it to you in English. And his family took up residence in the city of Branchland. As the prophet said, he's going to be called the branchite. And then you find all these prophecies about the branch. Would you say, oh, that's crazy? Or would you say, isn't that interesting? Especially given Jewish methods of interpretation of the day. And especially when the whole section is such a prophetic section. And especially when this concept of the branch occurs in other places. But there, the clearest of all, Isaiah 11:1, he's called the Netzer. Most scholars accept that designation. For me, there's no reason to look any further. And the going from the Hebrew to the Greek and the different letters involved, it all can work out without a problem. So you have two choices when you read this. You can either say, Matthew doesn't know what he's doing, and these proofs wouldn't convince anybody, and it's so easy to refute them. Or you can say, Matthew, with his eyes open to the Scriptures, recognizing his Messiah risen from the dead and sending the Spirit and power and confirming his word through these years, goes back and sees in many different ways God pointing to his Son. Now, here's the key thing. Please understand this. This is major. There are some prophecies which are laid out and given to us in ways so that as we ask, who is the Messiah? What does he have to do? Who does he have to be? How can we identify him? There are clear things given, clear things that had to happen within certain time frames. And then there are other things that you would call allusions, hints, interesting insights, things that point to. In other words, Matthew is not thinking that in quoting this verse or quoting this word that was spoken through the prophets, that he'll be a netzer, a branch, and he lived in Nazareth, that they'll all say, oh, then we have to believe. He's painting a whole picture, okay? And some of the rabbinic interpretation would be called midrash, which is homiletical interpretation. And there's no question that some of Matthew's interpretation is homiletical as well. In other words, there are certain things that you would say are proof texts, are fundamental, that are life and death passages. For example, if what we examined yesterday, Isaiah 42 and Isaiah 49 and Isaiah 53, are not messianic, then we have a hard time saying that Jesus is the Messiah. There are other things that are simply homiletical illustrations and interesting points and insights and things he draws out. And this is one of them. So he's not making it up. He uses a different quotation formula here. And he will be called the Nazarene is a summary of these prophetic voices saying he'll be called a branchite and he lives in branchland. Isn't that interesting? It's that simple.